We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. Subscribe and give the podcast a 5-star review wherever you listen, the website bookedonrock.com, and thanks to all of you for checking out the new blog on the website. I'd like to add something daily, if not every other day, but we'll see. I put up a poll asking fans to vote for the greatest Cheap Trick song, since we had Brian J. Cramp on to talk about his excellent new book, This Band Has No Past, How Cheap Trick Became Cheap Trick. Surrender has the early lead over Ain't That a Shame, the live version, Dream Police, and The Flame. It's still early, though. You can put your vote in over at bookedonrock.com. And also a big thanks to my buddies Sean and Todd at the Sean Geek and Fast Fret podcast for having me back on their show. Another two-parter. We're talking about Fair Warning from Van Halen. Look for the Sean Geek and Fast Fret podcast online, their website, seanmcginnity.ca. Also, a big thanks to Corey and Mark at And the Podcast Will Rock. I was back on their show, this time with Kelsey Van Halen to talk about Van Halen's Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do. Podcastwillrock.com is their website, and you can check out my blogs for links to both of those shows. All right, so on to this week's show, Cyndi Gennaro. He's our guest to talk about his new book, Beat the Odds in Business and Life. This is not only a fascinating read from a music fan's perspective, but this is a book that'll inspire you both personally and professionally. Cyndi is a world-class speaker and drummer who's recorded and toured with several globally known artists, including Cyndi Lauper, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, the Monkees, Bo Diddley, Johnny Winter, Montrose, the Pat Travers Band, Mark Farner, Robin Gibb, and Benny Mardonis. Cyndi plays drums on Benny's hit single from 1980, Into the Night. Along the way, Cyndi has learned a thing or two during his 50 years on the world stage. The music industry has cultivated in him a keen sense of business management, leading to this book, which has a collection of strategies, philosophies, and practical solutions to many of the struggles facing companies small and large. Reading this book will prepare everyone, from the CEO right down to the frontline employees, to navigate both the obstacles and the victories related to startup, growth, and sustaining market position. Cyndi uses real examples from his storied career with Hall of Fame artists to illustrate his lessons. You'll laugh and learn. He has the heart of a teacher and balances the practical with the didactic. This is a must-read for anyone involved in today's corporate climate, and he's got some great stories to share from his career in music, which we're about to get to. And I put together a playlist of the music Cyndi has played on and the artists he's performed with, including Cyndi Lauper, so check that out on the show notes page. Now, here is Cyndi Gennaro. Hey, Cyndi, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Eric. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I wish people could see the room that you're in, man. You got all these, what's behind you there? All these gold records and...
It's just little mementos of my career and of the tours I went on and support of some really big records and just tokens of the artists that I work for, their appreciation for me and for the band and whatever.
Well, let's get to it. Let's get to some of those artists that you've worked with. You've got a ton of accomplishments, but you also talk about some of the times you take a little hit and you got to get back up and keep moving forward. The Rod Stewart story that you talk about in the book. You're born in Manhattan, New York, grew up on Staten Island, and by 14, you're touring locally. By 18, touring the Midwest. By your mid-20s, you're in California, the drummer in Blackjack, a rock band who would land a major record deal. So it appears as if you've had that belief in good things, that belief in yourself from the start.
That is definitely the case, and that was a necessary ingredient to to overcome the obstacles that I had early in my career, and the amount of time I spent toiling in bars and high school dances and smelly little bars and small little gigs and graduation parties in the backyard with so I've had to have a tremendous amount of faith that good things will come, and it's not necessarily on my timetable that they will happen. And we just had to press forward. I never really had a doubt that it wouldn't ever happen. I always knew it would. It was just a matter of time. And in that matter of time, it was up to me to navigate all the, to stay positive in light of the fact that I was still playing bars after 10 years of starting to play drums and touring the Midwest and all of that.
And like you said, it was just a matter of time. And you did get some help from a friend to this day, a guy who was instrumental in getting your career to the next level. Carmine Appice or Appice?
I happen to pronounce his last name, depending on who you talk to, they
Yeah.
pronounce it differently. But, some people say Appice. I'm not sure what his pronunciation is, but I've been calling him Carmine Appice from the beginning. And I was a big fan of his when he was in the Vanilla Fudge, based in Long Island, New York. And they were big nationally. They had a hit with a remake of Keep Me Hanging On by the Supremes, but they were very popular in the New York tri-state area. And I used to go see them all the time. And then I ran into him in LA, and he became sort of like a mentor of mine. He heard me rehearse it one time, and he really liked my playing, and we got on, both being Italian from New York and living in LA. And at that point in LA, he already had, besides the Fudge, he had Ozzy Osbourne and all of that under his belt. So he was a famous rock star drummer, and I was privileged to even get to know him. And he was always very nice to me, even in New York. Before I actually became friends with him, I used to go to his drum clinics in Brooklyn, and he always had time for me to sign stuff for me. And so he was always very helpful. And in LA, he became an important part of that Rod Stewart story. As a result of that Rod Stewart debacle, that flubbed audition, I ended up bringing my own drums to the Rod Stewart audition when there was drums already provided. And I told him about that. I was depressed. I thought I blew the biggest audition of my life. And I was really, really depressed because I was in LA trying to get my first big break for about 3 years. And it wasn't happening at all. And so I finally got this audition, and I bring, it's at SIR where all the backline is provided. And I ended up bringing my own drums, and I made Rod wait and whatever. Anyway, I didn't get the gig, but I was very depressed, spoke to Carmine about it. And I said to him, Carmine, you should go for the gig because I don't think they found anybody yet. And I gave him the Rod's management's number. I think it was Rod's management or Gary Granger, the guitar player with Rod. I gave him a contact number for Rod's gig, and he went down and got the gig. So not only do you treat everybody well on the way up, but when you're up there, you still treat everybody well because you never know. And he ended up on not my recommendation, but me giving him the contact information. He went down and got the gig and was with Rod for about 7 albums and co-wrote Do You Think I'm Sexy and Young Turks and all of that for Rod. So if you read the testimonial at the beginning of the book, Carmine thanks me for giving him the biggest gig in his life, or turning him on to the biggest gig of his life. And I was a nobody at the time. I was just this fledgling drummer trying to get his first big gig. And so it goes both ways. If you're a big rock star, you still treat everybody with the common denominator of respect because of who they are, and they're the people that buy your records and buy your tickets to your concerts and stream your videos and all of that. And you never know who you're talking to. You never know who may have like a Superman outfit underneath them or a Wonder Woman outfit. So everybody deserves a basic common denominator of respect based on the fact that we're all human beings and we're all members of the human family, basically.
You give special thanks to your God for all the good things in your life. And I thought of that when you write in chapter 2, if you treat others well with no expectation of anything in return. That's the key.
That is the key.
You help yourself in the long run.
Don't put the rock star hat on. Put the human being hat on. That's basically a simple way to put it. So to finish up that Rod Stewart story, after I gave Carmine Rod Stewart's information, he said, Sandy, don't worry about it. You're going to get other gigs, and you can use my name as a reference anytime you need it because you're a great drummer, blah, blah, blah. So I sent resumes out, and it turned out that I sent the resumes out and Carmine was the only reference. Long story short, the story is in detail in the book, but I sent resumes to 50 managers that I really liked the bands that they handled, and one of them was Peter Grant of Led Zeppelin, but all his mail went to England, but his mailing address was in New York, his attorney's office in Led Zeppelin's attorney, Steve Weiss, who ran Swan Song Records, Led Zeppelin's label. And so my resume, coincidence, this is how the universe or God works. He works on your behalf behind the scenes without you knowing what's happening, because my resume never got forwarded to Peter Grant in England. Steve Weiss opens it without his name ever on it. What inspired Steve Weiss to open it? And right at that period of time, he's putting a band together around the songs written by Michael Bolton and Bruce Kulick. And this is before Michael Bolton became a solo artist. And this was Michael's first project, basically, first, recording deal. And it was a demo, and Steve Weiss was trying to get them a record deal. And now labels are contacting Steve saying, we want to see this band. We like the songs. So now Steve needed to find a bass player and a drummer. He found Jimmy Haslip as a bass player. And right at that time, he's looking for a drummer. My resume arrives and opens the resume and sees Carmine's name on it. This is how this is how God works. Steve Weiss, the attorney for Led Zeppelin, used to be the attorney for Vanilla Fudge and knows Carmine personally and sees his name, calls Carmine in L.A. Carmine vouches for me. The next call Steve Weiss makes is to me in L.A. and asks me, Carmine vouches for you. Do you want to fly to New York and audition for this yet unnamed band? We're going to be auditioning for labels. We're probably going to get a record deal. I said, sure. And that was my first big break from the bottom of the trenches. I was so depressed because I thought I blew the biggest audition of my life. And unbeknownst to me, it was just the start of everything.
Man, 1978, right? Polydor Records, Blackjack.
Correct.
That's the name of the band, Blackjack. You're at that point where, did you ever say, you know what, that's it, I'm just going to go back home? And
during that time, I didn't actually say that's it. I was really, really bummed out, really depressed, and I was 3,000 miles away from home. My first marriage, which I affectionately call my practice wife, that wasn't working out at all. I had hardly any money in the bank, and things were really going really, really terrible in LA. The people in LA would say one thing and then do another. I was very disillusioned by that whole situation out there. And I never really wanted to quit, but I had two voices going in my head. I had the positive voice. Oh, remember Ringo on Ed Sullivan? Remember how you really always dreamed about being on a big stage? And the other voice was saying, oh, you'll never make it. You might as well go back home. You might as well. But I stood fast in my belief, thinking that God had something for me, and it was only a matter of time till it happened. And I had to be, because another element of that decision, Eric, was the fact that, okay, if you throw the drumsticks in the fireplace and you quit trying to make it in music, what are you going to do? What's your plan B? And you know what? I didn't really have a plan B. It was like go to work at a hardware store, go to work in a record store, So without the alternative, it wasn't that I had a doctorate degree and I could go teach or go be a physician. Drumming wasn't a hobby for me. Drumming was going to be my life. And that's what kept me going, basically.
And you worked with legendary producer Tom Dowd. He produced the first Blackjack album. What a resume. And he's worked with so many legendary artists, and most famous, I suppose, for his work with Derek and the Dominoes and the track Layla. He sadly passed in 2002. What is it that made him such a great producer? You specifically referred to the psychology of a producer in the book.
He had the perfect producer psychology, and as it applies to business, the perfect leader psychology, not a boss. He wasn't a boss. I was recording a track with Blackjack. In those days we recorded stuff live. We actually played our instruments. How about that? And I was recording, and I did this one measure 4-beat fill into a chorus, and he stopped. And instead of reprimanding me like a boss would, he didn't say, Sandy, that fill sucked. What are you doing that for? We'll play for the, whatever. He said, hey, Sandy, listen, your drums sound really good. He set me up with a positive first, because I was really nervous when he stopped the recording to talk to me. And he said, your drums sound really, really good. Your timing is awesome, and blah, blah, blah. He said, do you mind if I ask you a question? And I said, no, Tommy. He goes, why did you play that fill in the beginning of the chorus. And I said, well, I thought it was a good fill. He said, well, I thought it was a good fill too, but that's not what I asked you. I asked you why you played it there. And I didn't have an answer for him. He says, Sandy, the song doesn't really require a one measure fill. Just go ahead and play a 1.5 beat fill, or one beat, boom, ba, boom, ba, da, 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 and bring the chorus in like that. So the producer psychology was, he set you up with a positive, and he asked questions. And when you ask somebody a question as a leader, or even as a parent, when you ask your kids a question, or if your kid is not doing something right, or your employee is not doing something right, don't just reprimand him in front of people. You ask him a question. Hey, how else do you think you can do that a little bit better? Hey, you know what? Your work is really good. You're a valuable part of our family. You're a valuable part of our company. But how do you think? Do you think you could do that any kind of? Let's discuss some different ways to get to that same solution. It's like Ted Lasso always said: don't be judgmental, be curious. And when you're curious, you ask questions. And when you ask questions, the recipient of those questions automatically believes the asker of that question, if that's a word, cares about them. So it comes from a whole different mental position as the recipient of constructive criticism, as opposed to a reprimand. And and that, besides the fact I read Tom Dowd's name on the back of records since I'm 15 years old and had an utmost respect for him, and that was part of the payback. Hey, I'm doing a record with friggin' Tom Dowd in Criteria Studios in Miami, the same studio that Eric Clapton, recorded Layla. I don't know if it was
461 Ocean Boulevard, I think he recorded that.
461 Ocean Boulevard. I'm not sure where Layla was recorded, but he produced that record too. And Aretha Franklin, he was an engineer in Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Joe Bonamassa he produced. He was in very high regard, and I took everything he said, and I even stayed for the whole record. I could have went home after my drums were done, or after my drum tracks were done, but I stayed for the whole record because I just wanted to be a fly on the wall in that studio.
The timing of this is so interesting. When I was reading the book and now talking to you, because I've just started working with an organization that leads everything with positive, and then in the middle, it's, hey, here's some constructive criticism, ends again with, you're doing a fantastic job. Because I've worked for a long time in places, it was not that. It's all just negative, leading with a negative. Your confidence level goes down. I had no problem. Like, tell me, constructive criticism, let me hear it. I want to know. If they started differently, you're taken aback, you're on your heels, and what are you talking about? And then you don't want to. And like you said, you wouldn't have probably wanted to stick around for the rest of those sessions if Tom Dowd was just a total jerk to you. You'd be probably like, I'm done, I'm out of here. I don't did my job.
My ego would be bruised, and my job was done. I'm out of here. But I didn't, because he was he became like a musical father to me. One other situation that Tom Dowd inspired excellence in me. Bosses demand excellence, and leaders, professionals inspire excellence. And Tom Dowd inspired excellence. I wanted to do such a great job for this man because he was just awesome. We're in a lunchroom at Criteria, me and him by ourselves, and he says to me, he puts his arm around me, and he says to me, hey, Sandy, you're going to do great things in this business. He goes, this is not going to be the last band you play in. You're going to be playing with many other big bands on big stages, and every time you come through Miami, I want you to put me on the guest list, and I want you to get me a laminated pass, and I want to follow your career. I want to come to all the gigs I could possibly come to because I love your playing. You're doing great. And that was the statement. Okay. So
wow.
I'm looking up at Tom Dowd. I'm going, this is Tom Dowd. So then he goes to me after he said that. He said, do you mind if I suggest something that's going to make you even a better drummer than you are now? And I said, of course, Tommy. He goes, did you ever play with a metronome? And I said, no, Tommy. He goes, you know what? That'll make you even a better drummer than you are now. He goes, go to the music store down the road. I know the manager. I'll give you a good deal on the metronome. Take it back to your room. Put it on any tempo you want. and just pick up your sticks in your hotel room, take your shoes off so you're not disturbing the people below you, and just air drum with the click. But just air drum to the click, any beat that you know, and play that to that click for about 2.5 minutes, because songs are at least 2.5 minutes long. And then adjust the tempo, do it a little faster, play 2.5 minutes, and this way you'll charge your internal timekeeping battery. The metronome charges your timekeeping battery. Become friends with the metronome, because that's going to be your best friend as a drummer through your career.
Wow, that's
man, was he right.
Now, just an aside, just because you mentioned that, what happens sometimes when a band is live in concert? They're so fired up that the song is played a little bit faster than normal, and maybe that starts with the drummer, I'm assuming, and then the rest of the band follows. Does that happen to you?
It does happen, but there's a window, Eric. There's a window of tempo variance. You have the album tempo, and when you play it live, yes, with the excitement or whatever, you can play it a little faster, but there's a window. You got to play it within that window, because if it's too fast, especially if it's fast, consistent, that's one thing. It's got to be within that window, but as long as it's consistent fast,
it's got to stay there.
Tempo. Where the problem is that when drummers speed up a fill and then come in, and then when they play back to the beat again, they slow down. The fluctuation is the issue. But nowadays, Eric, that's hardly an issue with drummers, because almost every live show that you see, I'm saying almost, is done with some sort of timekeeping device. You see the drummers with in-ears, or you hear percussion, but you don't. Now there's computers they don't have to play a click. They can play a shaker, chugga, 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 in perfect time. So the drummer has that shaker in his monitors or in his in-ears, and he plays along with that. Or if you go see a band and you're hearing background vocals that, like a choir, and you only see one guy singing backup, it's like that with strings, with horns, with keyboards. You go see Aerosmith and you hear brass, but there's no horn players up there. Chances are they're flying that stuff in from a computer. And if they fly stuff in on a computer, the drummer has to play with some sort of timekeeping the device, so the time stays really consistent.
There's another cool moment regarding getting back what you give to others. So you're on tour with the Pat Travers Band, 1981, and this is in Hartford, actually, right near, about 30 minutes from where I'm living, Hartford, Connecticut.
Where are you now?
It's called Southington, Connecticut. So Hartford's 30 minutes from here. New Haven is like 45. And it's now called the XL Center, but the Hartford Civic Center. So what happens on that night? You title this chapter, Dave in the Doorway.
Dave in the Doorway. Dave in the Doorway. Okay. After that Pat Travers gig at the Hartford Civic Center, it was really hot, and everybody, this is after the show in the dressing room, everybody was being rushed out of the dressing room by our road manager because we had an overnight drive. Get on the bus. Everybody went on the bus. And Sandy, hurry up. You're always the last one out of the dressing room. And I'm rushing around, sweaty and grabbing my stuff in a hurry. And Dave, there's this man physically standing in the doorway of the dressing room with a pen and a camera. Now, again, I could have put the rock star hat on and blew him off. Sorry, I'm in a hurry, man. Or I could have just not said anything, or I could have said, sorry, I'm in a hurry, man. I don't have time for you. But I didn't, because I said to myself, this guy is there to see the drummer. He wants my autograph. Travers, the star, is already on the bus. He's not there to see the star. And I always had a interesting feeling about people placing a lot of value on other people signing their name on a piece of paper. When I was walking around the mall at 15 years old with my mother, she used to say, "Hey, Sandy, I know you're dressing like a rock star, but why do you carry a pen around everywhere?" And I said, "Well, it's because if anybody asks for my autograph, Ma." So she thought that was interesting. But anyway,
visualizing it, right? You're already
visualizing it. I lived as if, even though I wasn't any kind of drummer yet, But anyway, back to the doorway in Hartford Civic Center. I stopped and engaged him, and I said, "What can I do for you, man? I'm really in a hurry, but what can I do for you?" He goes, "Oh, I love the way you play, blah blah blah," and mentioned certain songs, and he said, "Would you mind signing this for me?" And I signed. He goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Dave." "Okay, Dave, I got to go." He goes, "Take a picture with me, please, Sandy." And I took a picture with him. I said, "Dave, I got to go. Sandy, I'm a bass player here in Connecticut. Can you help me out getting a gig in New York City?" And I said, "Well, Dave, I can't really recommend you unless I hear you play." So I gave him my card, and I said, "Here's my card, my home address, my home phone number. This is 1981, no cell phones. Send me a cassette of your playing, and I'll see what I can do to my contacts in New York City." He couldn't believe I was giving him my home number and my home address. I said, "No big deal, Dave. Just go ahead and send me a cassette." 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, he sends me a cassette. Nothing really happens with it. It wasn't really that good. But 2 years later, he calls me and he says, "Hey, Sandy, you remember me, Dave, from Connecticut? I sent you that cassette." And I go, "Yeah, Dave, how you doing?" He said, "I'm managing this girl now, and she's going to be the biggest thing in 1984. I want you to be part of her band." And I was reluctant. I said, "I'm coming off an arena tour, Dave. You can't ask me to join a baby band again and share rooms and make hardly any money and whatever." He goes, "I'll take care of you, Sandy. Just come down and meet her." And I went down to the studio where they were doing their first record. She was doing her first record, and it was Cyndi Lauper. And I decided to join her band. And during that tour, nobody knew who she was when we started touring. But in 5 months, she was selling 5-6 million records. That's that 5 million platinum there. That's Cyndi Lauper's thing.
Oh, okay.
And
Is that the one? Wait, is that? Oh, yeah, directly behind you there.
yeah, directly
Nice.
behind me, the 5-1. That's five times platinum. She's so unusual. April 23rd of that tour, April 23rd, I played Charlotte Coliseum, and I met this woman backstage. And now needless to say, when you're on tour with a headline act like that, you meet a lot of people every single night. But this first certain woman struck a chord with me. She was beautiful. I met her. We started talking, and I invited her to the show the next night. It was in Atlanta at the Fox Theater. We started seeing each other long distance. A year later, November of '85, she moved up to New York from Charlotte, North Carolina. She was 20 years old. We started living together. 5 years living together. We got married in 1990. 1994, we had our daughter Jerry, who's 28 now, and we're still together 36 years later.
How awesome!
So that was as a result of the Cyndi Lauper tour. And the Cyndi Lauper tour happened because I spent 5 minutes with Dave in the doorway signing a friggin' autograph for him. And so you never know. I never thought anything would come out of that little encounter with Dave in the doorway. Never thought anything.
If you had just turned away and got on the bus, how things would have.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I think about that, Eric. I think about that a lot. What if I would have just turned away and got on the bus? Where would my life be today? Because my wife is the Rock of Gibraltar, and I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for her. And she's unbelievable. She's just unbelievable. And I'm still as happy as ever with our relationship. She's still as beautiful as ever. And I'm grateful. I wake up every morning being grateful for her and for my life. Yeah.
You had a great mom too, right? She was very supportive.
Oh, my mom. She was very supportive. She was awesome. Another example I give in my presentations to corporate America is that Cyndi signed an 8x10 for my mother, and the 8x10 was me and Cyndi on stage or whatever. It was just a black and white 8x10, and she said, Cyndi said, "To Sadie, your son is great. XXOO Cyndi," and it had a big effect on my mother. Because it took Cyndi Lauper 5 seconds to write that, but it had a profound effect. It was like a validation for all the hard life. It's too long to go into now, but my mother had a really hard life. My father died when she was 40. My father was 42, dying of brain cancer. I was 11. And she had to raise me, and she had to raise my sisters, who were 15 and 17 at the time. And my father had no life insurance. My mother worked a seasonal job. We weren't very well off. We were lower middle class. And we always had a hot meal on the table. We always had a Catholic education, me and my sisters. My mother never complained about anything. She put up with the noisy rehearsals in the basement with me practicing all hours of the night, whatever, driving me to gigs, picking me up from gigs before I had a license. And so when I finally played Madison Square Garden with Lauper, and I brought my mother to the gig, and Cyndi signed that for her. It was like a validation. She used to carry that picture everywhere to her hairdresser and say, hey, look what Cyndi Lauper thinks of my son. Hey, to her card games and poker games with her friends, church meetings, whatever. So the point is that I tell corporate America, yeah, you're the CEO of your company, but spend 5 minutes with engagement to your people. Don't always worry about the numbers that they produce or about the job. Worry about the person. Engage with the person, pat them on the back, catch them doing something good. And it really means a lot. Don't send a text saying great job. Write a handwritten note to them. And it really, really resonates. It may not mean anything to you as your CEO, but it means a lot to your people. And you know what? Your people will work harder for you if you show them your appreciation and how valuable you are. If you may think that they're valuable, but express it to them. It takes you 5 minutes to send a handwritten note. Doing a great job. What a great job on the XX project. Simple as that. And I would go to the end of the earth for Cyndi Lauper because of how she felt about me and how she treated my mother.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, you worked for her and Joan Jett?
Yep, there's a picture over there of Joan signing an autograph for my mother too. So it's like, it's you don't do it for that reason, but leaders and parents even, it's self-serving in the long run by treating other people well and acknowledging their importance in the family or in their organization because they work harder for you. And if they work harder for you, the product or service or their behavior gets better. And if the product or service gets better, the customers are happier. And if the customers are happier, they tell their friends and whatever. It's like that, It's a very simple thing that's lost on a lot of people that we call bosses, where they're only worried about the production and the numbers that you produce. And I call that icing, all icing and no cake.
The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this. The Booked on Rock podcast is online at bookedonrock.com. Find a list of all the major platforms where you can listen and subscribe to the podcast. Link up to our social media sites. Find out the latest Books on Rock releases. Find your nearest bookstore. And if you want to reach out to us, you can contact us through our website, bookedonrock.com. You were with Joan Jett in late 80s, right? 1989 you toured with her.
89, yeah, 89, 90, towards the end of 90. It was about at the end of 88, I joined the band, and I was with her all of 89 and a little part of 90.
So it's interesting because these are two artists who had a ton of pressure on them because they now are big time. They're famous. They got the hits. They got the songs on the radio. They're packing the arenas. So I'm interested in how they handle that in terms of how is their mood when things start to get crazy, when the fame and the fortune kicks in. How are they with their band?
It was a little different with Joan because when with Joan's I Love Rock and Roll, that was 1980.
Right. So she was
already a big star when I joined the band. I joined her band in support of the album Up Your Alley with Hate Myself for Loving You was on it and Little Liar. I joined the band in that. I was in the video for Little Liar or whatever. And then I played with her on a subsequent record called The Hit List, which is on the wall over there. But so she was already a star. She was already used to, playing big shows. Cyndi, when I joined the band, she was, I don't want to say a nobody. She was in a band in New York called Blue Angel that were kind of regionally popular, also on Polydor Records. But when she got the deal with CBS and put out that first record, really nobody knew who she was. And at the beginning of the tour, she was able to, monitor all the aspects of the production. What the band wore, what our hair looked like, and where the risers were, or everything. But as the gig grew, and it grew, the climb was like 45 degrees. It was like unbelievable in such a short amount of time. It exploded. So in that short amount of time, she still tried to maintain control and monitor all. Now, instead of a bar and traveling in a Winnebago, we were on a tour bus playing arenas with hiring a lighting director, and so she took a little time getting adjusted to delegate responsibility as far as what the lights look like, as far as, of course, her input was always important. But once you give your input, you hire somebody to do a job, and you hire them to do a job because they do the job better than you. You allow the lighting guy and the monitor guy and this front of house sound guy to do what they do best, what they're paid for. But sometimes she had a little difficulty delegating. She eventually learned, and everything turned out, fine and whatever. But I must say, we had an incredible road manager in Robin Irvine, who just recently passed away about 2 weeks ago. And he was the calming factor. He never raised his voice. He always, regardless of the hurricane surrounding the gig at certain times, he always maintained a level of calm. We'll get through this. We'll work, positivity. You talk about positivity. He was awesome. I just had to give my kudos to Robin Irvine. He's just freaking awesome. Rest in peace, Robin.
Yeah. Now I believe this is when Girls Just Want to Have Fun is like literally on the radio, blowing up like as you're on tour. Is that?
Well, yeah, we started the tour, as I said, in a Winnebago, and I remember Dave Wolf, her manager, would come in to rehearsal and go, "Hey, we got 2 more stations in the Midwest. Hey, they were building it." But then the key was, Eric, was we played on the MTV Live New Year's Eve Ball, 83 into 84, and we killed it. It was live, broadcast over. It was like when MTV did a live New Year's Eve ball where they had 4 bands, and each band brought in the New Year's Eve in a different time zone. So it was one big lump of live concert. But Billy Idol went on and brought in the New Year's Eve in New York, and then we went on the same stage, but at 1 o'clock in the morning, and brought in the New Year in Chicago Central Time Zone, and so on and so forth. But as a result of that show, we were, after that show, we all had a glass of champagne. It was a celebratory. We did great because we killed it with the band, and Cyndi was awesome. There's some stuff on YouTube from that gig. Dave says, "Okay, we're going to continue the tour in the Winnebago, whatever. We're going to try to break Girls Just Want to Have Fun. We'll go out, but I don't know what the date he said, like January 5th, January 6th of 84. But we got a call from David January 2nd and said, 'Pack your bags, we're going to LA. Why, David? Well, based on our performance on MTV the other night, Carson wants us for the Tonight Show. Solid Gold, the TV, wants us for a taping of their syndicated show, Solid Gold. Dick Clark wants us for American Bandstand. HBO wants to do a special on us, and we're going to do a live gig in LA.' So we flew to LA, and once we were on the Tonight Show, we played Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and time after time live on the Tonight Show with Carson. Carson invites her over to sit on the dais with him.
And that's when you've done something good.
And Cyndi was spot on, man. It was right at the beginning with the whole Lou Albano thing and whatever, and the video, and Carson just loved her. So after that performance, we saw it almost literally day to day, going from small little bars to bigger bars to theaters, civic centers, arenas, and multiple nights in arenas, a European tour of just TV. We just went to Europe for about 2 weeks and did a TV show in every country in Europe. It was unbelievable.
People that are old enough to remember MTV when it hit, the exposure that MTV had, because radio airplay certainly helped. MTV global. I mean, it was on, certainly as the years went on, everybody had it, and the impact overnight, you could.
Yeah, and not only that live show, but as a result of that live show, Eric, they played the Girls Just Want to Have Fun video like once every 10 minutes. Are you kidding? It was great. It was really good. And subsequently, she had the band be in the video for Time After Time. We were in the video for She Bop. It was a great gig. I value that memory so well. I'm so appreciative of being part of that.
I can imagine. Awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. Cyndi Gennaro is here to talk about his book, Beat the Odds in Business and Life, which is out now. You did eventually get a steady paying job as a music instructor, and you say in the book it made you a much better drummer. How so?
Going back to the thing where I never got any gig from a resume, I got all the gigs from a relationship or doing some. I did Dave in the Doorway a favor. I wanted to make him fortunate for having crossed my path, and I got a call from this guy, a complete stranger. He had this oldie. He was a bass player, musical director for this oldies gig, whatever. And he needed a drummer really bad last minute. I didn't really want to do it. I did it. I did him a favor. And it turns out about 3 months later, he calls me and he says, you really bailed me out. If I couldn't find a drummer for that night, I would have got fired from my gig. But I was hired by this new band doing a reunion tour. Do you want to do it? And I said, who's that? He goes, the Monkees are going on the road. And do you want to play drums? I said, sure. So now rehearsing, getting back to what your question is, rehearsing for that first Monkee tour, I rehearsed at a place called The Collective because I lived in an apartment in Manhattan at the time. And I rented a room, a couple of hours to rehearse the Monkee stuff. I came out of the room to pay for my time. And the owner of the school says, hey, man, you sounded good. What were you doing in there? I go, I'm rehearsing. I'm going on the road with the Monkees. He goes, oh, man, congratulations. Did you ever think about teaching? We need a rock guy here at this school. And I said, no, I never really thought about teaching. I hardly knew how to read music at the time. But I said, yes, I'll try it. He goes, let me know when you're coming off the road. I'll set you up with some students. So that started a 27-year teaching career at the Collective, the world famous Collective School of Music in New York City, which I think is down on Wall Street now and under different ownership. But it used to be on 6th Avenue, 14th and 15th Street. And now I'm teaching the instrument with the click, with the metronome. I'm becoming a better drummer. I'm learning how to read so I can teach other people how to read music. And that was a 27-year career. Out of that association with the Collective, I did a instructional video called Drum Basics that were picked up by Warner Brothers and was also picked up by Yamaha Drum Company. And the Yamaha Drum Company put the instructional video Drum Basics in the box with every new drum set sold around the world. So you can imagine how lucrative that was. But the point I'm trying to make is the fact that I just helped this guy named Jerry Renino out on his oldies gig. I did him a favor, and all of that good fortune happened as a result of just me doing a favor for a stranger playing an oldies gig with a band called the Tokens, who had a hit called Lion Sleeps Tonight, Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. And I had to set up my own drum. I did the guy a favor because he was really sincere. And so every single gig of my life, Eric, was as a result of me reaching out to somebody, not thinking of myself of anything special, just like being a human being, being just a guy, and just helping somebody out. If somebody wants a piece of me because I play with Lauper, of course I'm going to engage them. A big Joan Jett fan reaches out to me, hey, you got any 8x10s of Joan? Well, let me look at my file and see. A complete stranger on Facebook. And I would go, and if I had some extra 8x10s, I'll send them one. It's like, why not, man? Without getting too philosophical about it, that's how we're going to be judged. When we go to the other place, we're going to be judged by how we treat people and how we engage people and how we made them laugh or how we made them entertain them or how we made their lives better or easier or, whatever it is. All businesses offer a product or a service to make people's lives better or easier, or insure them, or provide transportation, or whatever. It's all to enhance human life. And when we do that, the universe, God smiles upon that, and that's how we're rewarded. Sometimes we're rewarded in this life, like the great gigs. I found my wife at, the Monkee gig or whatever, but sometimes we're rewarded in other ways too. It may not come directly, or it may be in the afterlife that we're rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just mentioned something I was just about to say. That my dad, sadly, he just passed away last month. And so a friend of mine gave me a book about the afterlife. And in the book, it was a guy whose son had passed. He was only 23. And it was like a carjacking, only he was on his motorcycle. And then he gets shot and he dies. Now, this guy says that his son came to him, helped him write the book, right? Tell him, he's explaining to him what happens when you get to the other side. But the one thing that he was saying to his father, which really stood out with me, he says the whole key of life is to love and learn. Those are the two words, love and learn. And it was interesting. He said anybody that you may have hurt while you were here, you're going to have to feel that when you get to the other side, because you got to learn. You got to understand what your purpose was on this. I thought that was pretty deep stuff.
It's totally deep stuff. First of all, I'm sorry about your dad.
Thank you. My mom's still alive and well, and huge inspiration and support. And my dad, same thing. Great parents.
I was lucky enough to have great parents too. That both of them are deceased now. But if you want to read a book, Eric, and I have it, I've read through. I read it. I think I read it in the '80s. But it's a book called Life After Life, and it's by a doctor by the name of James Moody, Moody.
That sounds familiar.
I have it. It's on my shelf right over there, and it's yellow. It's yellow. Yellow. The pages are yellow. I'll send it to you. If you can't find it online or Amazon, you can probably get it for $2 used.
Okay.
Man, I'll tell you what. This guy, this doctor, brought many people back to life that they were flatlined as a result of an accident or whatever. And he decides to interview about 50 of these people that had near-death experiences that were considered physically dead and came back. And he asked them a certain set of questions about what did they experience when they were in that afterlife. And I'm not going to go into it now because we'll be here for 2 hours. But you should read it because it'll make you feel better.
Yeah.
It'll make you, if you can feel good about the passing of your parent, it's hard to do that. But it would make you feel contented knowing that your dad is in a better place.
Yeah. Well, and I talked about it on this podcast because I had Susan Massino, who's a great writer, and she's written books on AC/DC, but among other things is she's an empath, psychic empath, and so I told her that story, or the story about my dad, how I feel like he reached out to me shortly after, and it's kind of a long story, so I won't. But basically, I felt peace, knowing that like he's doing okay. And she says, "Oh yeah." I said, "Am I crazy? Am I just kind of like thinking or seeing things that aren't there?" She goes, "No, that's him. He's letting you know he's good, And that helped.
That's
that helped.
awesome.
But yeah, that book as well was, the book that I have. It helps, and I want to read the one that you're talking about as well because those things.
And if you didn't write it down, if you need, just email me sometime, and I'll send you the name of the book and the author or whatever. Or I can even send you the book. I'd really like to have it my own, but if just look on Amazon, you can get it.
I'm gonna check.
Life After Life.
I'm gonna check. I have to ask you about public speaking because this is the biggie. There was an article in the Washington Post that I read said fear of public speaking is America's biggest phobia. Over 25% say they fear speaking in front of a crowd. You write in your book about how being a music instructor leading to your quote-unquote enjoyment of public speaking. Before I ask you how people can overcome fear of public speaking, what is it that you enjoy most about it?
I just love it. And you know what? People ask me all the time when I'm sitting in front of a room with 2,000 CEOs doing my Beat the Odds presentation. People ask me, how did you get from a drummer to public speaking? And as you mentioned, I never had any problem speaking in front of people. I've always performed in front of people. I always kind of was looking for the camera. And then teaching at the Collective, I taught group classes, and then being involved with different drum companies and cymbal companies, I gave clinics. So I was always had a little background of speaking in front of groups, and that was never an issue for me. But how did I get in front of corporate? Well, you know what? It was because I looked out for somebody playing a concert. I went back with the Pat Travers Band in 2010. In 2015, I was doing a concert in San Diego with the Pat Travers Band, and as I do during the encore, I was looking for what audience member is going to get my drumsticks, or which audience members were going to get my drumstick, and I would scope it out. This way, after the show was done, I would walk to the lip of the stage and throw out drumsticks. Well, this night in San Diego, I noticed a handicapped woman. She was in a wheelchair, and she loved it. All during the show, I was noticing her facial expression. She was smiling or whatever, and we made eye contact. And I went over after the show, and I threw a drumstick to her, and the guy next to her intercepted the drumstick, and I could have just kept walking. Okay, well, no, I went back and I told the guy, no, I want her to have it. And I replaced his. The next day, her husband, sitting on the other side, her Facebook messaged me and says, "Can I have your number?" And I thought, well, I hope she didn't get hurt. I hope she didn't get a splinter from my drumstick, whatever. I didn't have to give it to him, but I gave him my number. Called me and he explained, "Hey, Sandy, thank you for throwing that drumstick. You made my wife's night. She was close to tears on the way home. She's going to put the drumstick in a shadow box, blah, blah, blah." He said, "I'm coming to Nashville to speak. Can I meet you in person and buy you a cup of coffee?" I could have said, "No, I'm 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning." I could have said, "Nah," but I did. I engaged him, went and had a coffee with him. He thanked me in person. He said, he asked me how I got certain gigs. I told him the Cyndi Lauper story. I told him the Rod Stewart story. I told him the Joan Jett story, the Monkees story, whatever. And he told the story. He said he invited me to his presentation. He was a public speaker, and he spoke in Nashville, and he invited me to the presentation, introduced me at the presentation, and asked permission if he can tell the Dave in the Doorway story. And he did. And it got a good reaction from these corporate type. And long story short, Eric, he said, based on that story, Sandy, you have a career waiting for you in public speaking, and I'll help you any way I can. I'll be your mentor. He said, you have a really, really good story. So based on that meeting, and every time he came to Nashville subsequently to speak, he used to invite me. And I go, and he introduced me to certain key people in the speaking industry or whatever. And that's, long story short, that's basically how I got started in public speaking. And I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now, and it's growing every year. My schedule is growing every year, and I'm really, really grateful. But the point is how I got that. I threw a drumstick to a woman in a wheelchair. 20,000 people in that arena. I could have threw it to anybody. I could have just flicked it randomly into the crowd like a lot of drummers do. But I earmarked her because she was handicapped. And I wanted to put a smile on her face. And as a result, the universe smiles upon that and makes the husband is a speaker. It's like,
yeah, and
the husband could have been a bricklayer, for crying out loud. It's like,
I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, not just musicians, who say, "I'm good. How come I haven't made it?" Well, you've got the talent, but you got this other aspect here. You got this real important part that is forgotten. Be kind to others because you don't know. But now, how does somebody who is paralyzed by public speaking, how can they overcome that? I remember having a college course where they told me at the end of the semester I was going to get up in front of the class. I wish they never did that because it was 3 months of oh, shit. If it wasn't in my mind, but maybe I should have just retrained my mind and visualize. I don't know. There was a girl in the class I had the hots for too. So I was like, oh shit, I got to get up before I'm going to make an ass of myself. But anyway, but no, how do you do it?
I don't know really how to answer that question.
Just do it.
I've never been asked to coach somebody that has a stage fright of public speaking and then made them into a speaker. I guess it would start by, and I do this sometimes around certain parts of my presentation. I'll just go in front of a mirror. I'll go in front of a mirror and pretend that there's 400 people there and just talk into the mirror. You get a lot of information by looking at yourself speak. But I don't know. My wife is the same way. My wife sometimes is asked, and she used to be a manager of retail management, and she used to go to these conferences and stuff and asked to present certain things, and she did. But she's a little uncomfortable doing it. I really don't know how to answer that, Eric. How to make someone that has that stage fright.
I think you answered it though. It's rehearsal, right? Get in front of the mirror, practice, and then just keep doing it.
Practice. It's practice. It's regarding anything that you have to prepare to do. Like if I have to prepare some songs to play for a band or whatever, your work ethic really, really matters. So you practice, and when you're done practicing, when you feel like you know the material or you know the speech or you know the song, then rehearse for another hour. So you go in not having any trepidation, any doubt about what you're going to do because you rehearsed your ass off. So that insecurity goes away. So now I'm concentrating on being the engine of the car in your band, and you make sure. But that's one of the things that I could just suggest is your work ethic has to be stellar. You can't, you always feel insecure about a job you're about to do if you don't prepare for it.
The Booked on Rock podcast will return after this. If you're a publisher or author of a book on rock and you want to be on the Booked on Rock podcast, contact us through our website, bookedonrock.com, or send an email to the Booked on Rock podcast at gmail.com. What was it like working with Bo Diddley?
It was awesome working with Bo Diddley because if you think about Bo Diddley, who's a Hall of Famer, he started his career in a freaking station wagon driving around with five, him being black in Southern America, in a segregated America. Not that it's gotten any better these days, but, he ends up in the Hall of Fame. He used to tell me stories where he was brought by his stepmother up to Chicago, and he was a big blues fan, and Muddy Waters was playing in some club in Chicago, and he couldn't get in because he was too young, but he listened through the door or peeked in the window, and he sat outside with his acoustic guitar with his guitar case open, and people were throwing change into the guitar case. So that's basically where he started, and he ends up being in the Hall of Fame. The guy was the most, there was never a set list with Bo Diddley, and Debbie Hastings, who was the musical director for Bo Diddley when I joined the band, she invited me to become part of the band, and she said, and I said, okay, well, great, we're going to be, well, Sandy, your first gig is the House of Blues in New Orleans. I said, okay, great, when is it? Oh, it's about a month from now. Okay, great. Can you send me a tape or a CD of the song? Oh, no, you don't need that. What about just a list of songs that he may do? No, you don't need that either. Debbie, how can I prepare for this? Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine. Bo just plays whatever is on the top of his mind. He just reads the audience and just starts a song. He'll tap his foot, it'll give you the tempo, and then he'll start the song. And, sometimes she was telling me that he doesn't even start the song in the same key as he did the night before. So he was totally random, totally feel. He was a feel. When you talk about feel, well, he was feel. It was a great experience with Bo Diddley. I love that man. He used to call me Red for some reason. And I used to constantly in an airport waiting. I go, Bo, let me have your glasses. I go, Bo Diddley, you can plant tomatoes on these glasses. They were so dirty with fingerprints and everything, and they were big like the bottoms of Coke bottles, So.
And to this day, the Bo Diddley beat, man, the band's still using that Bo Diddley beat.
Man, it sure is. It's yep, that beat has been donk. That's been used in hundreds of songs in some variation or another.
All right, what about Queen? You toured with Queen. You were in a band called Kraft, Craaft. Who
you did your research, Jay. You did your research.
I did my research. Opened for Queen in 1986. You hung out with Brian May and Roger Taylor, became friends with those guys. You got to meet the man himself, Freddie Mercury, larger-than-life frontman that we see on stage.
Absolutely.
Was he the same off stage? No, right? He's different.
He was very different off stage. On stage, he would have 100. We did gigs that were 110,000 people, open airs in Europe. I toured with them and as the opening act for 3 months in Europe. And so we would play like soccer stadiums and for like maybe 4 nights a week. And then once or twice a week, we played 110,000 people. But he had the audience right here. But in a private moment, he was very soft-spoken, very polite. He always carried on a conversation. He was so cool. And I asked him, hey, Freddie, is it okay if I take some pictures of you guys on stage? He goes, oh, sure, Sandy. He had a little overbite.
Did he call you darling? Did he refer to you as darling?
I don't remember if he called me darling, but I was introduced to him by Brian May, and I was with a German band. Kraft was German, and so he said, I was introduced to him as the drummer in the opening act, and he goes, "You're not from Germany. You're not German. He goes, where's that accent from? And I said, from New York. He goes, oh, New York. And then he started mentioning and playing the Garden or whatever, his favorite places to eat in New York or whatever. He was very forthcoming. And he says, sure, you could take pictures. Just wear your laminate. And so you don't get, and just stay out of the view of the audience. So I did that. I would take pictures. I have a picture on my wall over there that I actually took of Freddie. He was just awesome.
So here's the lesson to be learned, I think. We wrap up with this here. When the universe comes knocking, be ready. I want to finish by asking you about your Johnny Carson story and how this relates to 3 very important words from your book: visualize, internalize, actualize.
Well, rewinding the clock, before I did anything of note in the music business, actually right at the beginning of when I moved to LA. But when I was in New York prior to moving to LA, I used to be a big fan of The Tonight Show. Johnny Carson was my hero. I loved it. It was the last thing I watched before I went to bed. Every 3 or 4 weeks, he would play this game called Stump the Band, which he goes into the audience, picks somebody at random in the audience. They mention the name of a song. The Tonight Show band doesn't know the song. The audience member gets a dinner for 4 or whatever. So I used to dream and visualize myself on the Carson Show. I visualized myself on the Carson Show. I dreamt about it. I had one of those real dreams that I woke up in the morning and I actually asked myself, did that really happen? I'm sure you had one of those dreams. 10 seconds, then reality kicks in. Anyway, I moved to LA in 76, as we spoke about before. I sent away for tickets because Carson emanated a show from Burbank. Sent away for tickets. I went to the Tonight Show that night, and he ends up. The first coincidence is that they end up playing Stump the Band that particular night that I went, and I was the first one. He goes, "Anybody got a funny song?" I raised my hand. He goes, "Oh, okay. What about you? What's your name?" And it stood up, and it was just like I pictured it, Eric. When I dreamt about it, I dreamt, and it was real, and I visualized it. I saw Carson in front of me with the microphone, the lights, the big TV camera on the dolly, the Tonight Show band, and it happened just like I visualized it. It was unbelievable.
Okay, you're in a super mood tonight. We thought we'd play a session of Stump the Band. Anybody have any song? Somebody in our orchestra will. Okay, we'll start with this gentleman here. I assume you're a gentleman?
Yes.
You are? Hold on. No, I didn't mean that because. Oh, no. No, I didn't mean that because of the hair. I just meant gentleman. You are?
Cyndi Gennaro.
Where are you from, Sandy?
New York City.
What do you do back there?
Well, we're living out here now. We're living out here.
Well, what do you do here? You play music?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't kidding you here because my son wears his hair this long. I wish I could wear my hair that long. I used to have it all the way down my back. Not on my head, just all the way down my back, remember? Old joke, but this is an old show. What's the name of the song?
Tweezers of Your Love.
You're putting me on. Tweezers?
Tweezers of Your Love.
Tweezers of Your Love.
Tweezers of your love. Tweezers of your love. That's not my key.
That coat's not in your size, but that doesn't make any difference. They don't know that. Can you give us a shot of that?
Yep, for the band, it's, this is for the benefit of the band, it's G, A minor, D, G.
No, you see, you don't understand. You're talking to our guys. You see, no, you see, you don't understand. These guys don't read. So, when you say all that G, A minor, and so forth, in other words, they could pick that up?
I suppose they're union.
Okay. No, you don't understand. None of these guys are union either. In fact, we don't even know who these guys are. They just know.
Through the kitchen.
Give them that chord arrangement again.
G, A minor, D, G, like a country song, like one, dun, dun.
Okay.
I got a thorn stuck in my foot and how it hurts, man. I got it while walking barefoot in the rain. Doctrine ain't no good, it just won't help, man. Yeah. What I need is the tweezers of your love to ease my pain. Well, I went down to Memphis and down to Alabama and I met a young girl. Her name was Diana. Fine. Everybody knows she's as sweet as she can be. Then I came out of Memphis and out of Alabama. Really loved that girl. I told her all about it. understand why she said this thing to me. I got it.
Boy, well, they tell you when you're finished. Eh?
And it was one of my, it's just like a God wink. I call it a God wink. It really doesn't mean anything in the whole, in the structure of life, but it was a God wink. It was, if you visualize something and you expect it to happen and you feel that you deserve for it to happen and you think positive about it, and then you leave, you receive it in spirit first. And then you believe it in spirit, in down to the core of your soul, and you believe it and you visualize it, and you said, yep, it's only a matter of time. The universe takes over and puts things in, or people in your place, or inspires you to do certain things that make it happen.
And also warning the reverse. If you think it's not going to happen, or if you think negatively, it's going to come.
Good point.
Yep.
It's a law. Eric, it's just not my opinion. It's a law of the universe. What you send out, you get back. It's action, reaction. It's cause and effect. You throw a rock at a glass window, it's going to break. It's not going to you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's a law of the universe, and people should plug into that, because you end up living your life with wind to your back. You swim with the tide instead of life being a struggle all the time and hitting your head against the wall about things that are happening. Well, just try to think positive and treat people well, and the universe loves it. God loves people that make other people smile and benefit other people. Well, the God will then benefit you. They say, if you want more of something, give it away.
And God's been good to you. Life's been good to you. I got to sneak in one. Everybody's heard the song Into the Night by Benny Mardonis. Okay, we're talking to the guy who plays drums on that track.
Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Yeah, number 11 in 1980. And again, the top 40 in 1989, number 30 when it was re-released.
Right. And you know what? That's another situation that was the root of a tree from that Blackjack gig. Now, the Blackjack gig happened the way it happened. The universe did strange things and put people together, and I ended up in Blackjack across the country. But rehearsing for the second Blackjack record, that's when Benny Mardonis was down the hall in the same rehearsal studio and reviewing songs with his producer in preparation for his record. And he heard me play drums. The door was closed. He wasn't watching me play. He heard what the drums sounded like because Blackjack was rehearsing. I went to the soda machine to get a soda, and he said, were you playing drums in that room? And I said, yeah. He goes, you want to play on my record? You sound fucking awesome. Excuse the French.
That's okay.
He goes, I said, I can't leave my band. He goes, no, you don't have to leave your band. I'll pay you for the session. We'll set up the schedule and whatever. So I ended up doing that, and it was this top 10 record.
Did you have creative control at what you played there, or did he tell you this is how I want it to sound? Or did you get to have some fun with that?
The song was the song. I wasn't told what to play. I was told by the producer. I originally counted that song off. 3, 4, gung, dun, dun. And the producer stopped and he goes, hey, Sandy, would you mind just doing a little pickup instead of do a little drum pickup on that instead of just coming in on the one. So I just thought, and I thought of the advice Tom Dowd gave me, where you just do a little, don't play a big convoluted drum one measure. Just do like a little 1.5 beat. And what I did was, I can't do it here, but yeah, I could do it here. Hold on, and we'll send it off with this.
Yeah, cool.
This is my little laboratory.
Oh, look at the kit! Nice.
I have two drum kits set face to face when I teach here. But this is the little thing of Into the Night. Can you see me okay?
I can see it, and we can hear you.
Hold on. But that's what the fill was.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. And he stopped and he said, hey, Sandy, that's perfect. Dude, and you know what, Sandy? Every time you come to a section of the song where you got to do a fill, play that same one.
Yes.
Because it's so perfect. And I get, of all the shit that I played on, I mean that affectionately, of all the stuff that I played on, I get questions like that very, very often about that one fill. How did you play that fill? Oh, what a great feel. That track has a great feel. Blah, 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 blah. From famous drummers. I get emails from famous drummers going, hey, Sandy, how...
I love that, man. I'm glad I snuck that in.
I'm glad you snuck it in. You know what? I have so much memorabilia. I know I told you I only have 45 minutes, but man, if I had some time, I'd love to show you. I'm going to do a Facebook Live.
Yeah. For those listening, Sandy is spinning that camera around the room. He's giving me a nice look at all the sweet equipment in there and all that. Do you have a favorite drummer, by the way?
Ringo Starr.
There you go. Nice. Ringo.
Unequivocally.
Beat the Odds in Business and Life. It's out now through, is it pronounced Journeyman Publishing? Because it's spelled JRNY man.
Yeah, Journeyman Publishing.
Yep.
It's available on Amazon. If you want a signed copy of the book as well as some Beat the Odds drumsticks, you just go to my website, sandygennaro.com.
I got a signed copy right here.
Awesome.
Cool, man. Any websites, social media?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram under my name. Facebook is just my name. LinkedIn is just my name. As a matter of fact, if you go on my LinkedIn page today, it has a big like a testimonial from Debbie Hastings, who was the MD for when I joined the band for Bo Diddley. And I sent her a book, and she talks about the book as well. But,
cool. Well, send whatever links you want to send my way. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's just www.sandygennaro.com. Gennaro. You have.
It's all
and
right
my email. You're welcome to email me. I answer all my emails. It might take a day or two, but it's sandy@sandygennaro.com.
Sandy, thanks, man. This was so cool.
I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you so much, and our thanks to Jim McCarthy.
You bet. Yeah, Jim. We go way back to our radio days here in Connecticut, man. Yeah, he used to have an on-air name called Gilly.
Gilly.
Thanks again, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Eric.
And again, thanks to my friend Jim McCarthy for helping set up this interview. Check out his voiceover website, jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. He also hosts a podcast called the What's Your Problem podcast. He talks about the real problems and possible solutions of everyday business owners and professionals in and around Middle Tennessee and beyond. You can find out more on Jim's website, jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. And a big thanks to you, as always, for listening. I'm Eric Senich. Join me again next time for another brand new episode of Booked on Rock.
That's it. It's in the books.